Three, two, one. Hey, everybody, this is Victor. I'm here with Jimmy. Jimmy's a student of mine in my program, Six Figure House Flipper. We're going to be talking about Jimmy's success and his real estate journey and how Jimmy went from beginner to his first 22K net profit flip. How you doing?
I'm doing well, Victor. How about yourself?
I'm good. I'm good. Well, I'm
Good, good.
doing extra well because I know you just closed your first flip and that was your first deal, and just really excited to like share your story, share your journey because the first one's the hardest, and once you got that one out of the way, then it's smoother sailing. So really excited about that. I want to get into the story and like how you got the deal and the numbers, all that good stuff. Before we do, like what's your background? Like what do you do currently for work?
Currently, I am full-time with the Air Force.
Okay.
Not active duty anymore. I'm a reservist, but I'm working for them full-time. So I fix airplanes whenever they break, pretty much all hours of the day for the past year.
Hmm. Okay, so you're okay, mechanic.
Mhm.
Mechanic in the Air Force, is that fair to say?
Electrician, but yep,
Electrician. Oh, okay, excuse me.
aircraft electrician.
Aircraft electrician. Gotcha. Okay. And then, so like, what got you interested in real estate? Because I imagine like you do pretty well for yourself doing that sort of like specialized field. Like, like why real estate?
So I grew up working construction for a family construction business, and my uncles had between them a handful of rentals. They would do flips here and there. I think they did a new build at one point, and I always worked on them, but not for myself. So I would work on, one of their flips, one of their projects, and I just made an hourly rate while I watched them make like the actual money. So it's always something that was in the back of my head since I was probably 12 or 13.
Hmm. Okay, so you finally got into it. Basically, you got this
Mhm.
this deal. I'd love to hear the story of like the deal and like what happened, and yeah, just would love to hear the story here.
So I really started looking forward to it last November.
Hmm.
Actually, what kicked it off is I got sick. I had COVID
Hmm.
and I had to quarantine for 14 days. So the first 6 days or so, I didn't do anything. I couldn't move. But after that, I decided that, I have almost 10 days. I may as well really sit down and try to get a plan together.
Hmm.
So I started looking on PropStream. I found a failed listing. I sent out a whole bunch of letters.
Hmm.
I got a couple responses, and then I got back to work, didn't hear anything, and then I seen that the house that I mailed actually listed again on the MLS.
Hmm.
So I originally ran my numbers, and the list price was a lot closer to my maximum offer. So
Okay.
I went in and I put an offer on it. It was below asking, and they ended up accepting about middle of December
Okay.
of 2020.
Yeah. So middle of December. And then are you comfortable sharing like numbers, like what you bought it for and that sort of stuff?
Yeah, so they originally it was listed for 150,
Okay.
and it kept coming down over time over the course of like 2 years.
Mhm.
And then
Jeez. Okay.
lastly it was listed at I think 61,
So, so
and I offered 49,
yeah.
and I got it for 49.5, I believe,
Okay.
was the final plus closing and all the fees.
Yeah. So you got it for 49.5. That's so crazy. I just want to take a step back. Like from going from 150 to 49. That's such a jump. That's such a leap. It's such like a downward. Yeah. Yeah.
I
Were
think part of
you
that, it was a probate. So
okay?
the owners were deceased, and their sibling, or not siblings, their heirs, the children, are both live out of town. So I don't know, can't remember exactly where they lived, but
Okay.
I'm sure their market might have been a little bit better. Maybe they didn't quite understand,
Okay. It sounds like, I
the
mean,
potential
there's
value.
motivation there if it's sitting that long and
Hmm.
probate's inherited property. And I imagine there had to be like a lot of repairs done. So it need a lot of work. Can you kind of walk us through like what renovations you did on the place?
So walking in, I knew it was going to be a lot. I I expected to change all the windows. The roof had been done
Okay.
while I don't know, while the kids owned it within the last couple of years. The furnace looked good. The air
Mhm.
conditioner was ancient, so I knew that was going to need done. Planned on opening up a non-load bearing wall just to join the kitchen with the dining room. Flooring, I didn't know the extent of flooring because there was carpet in the downstairs.
Okay.
It ended up being too damaged to repair, so I went over that, but that was an unknown. And the wiring, I wasn't sure exactly how much with the wiring I was going to have to do.
I got you.
And
Okay.
yep.
It was quite a bit then. It was like a big renovation. So how long did the full renovation take you?
About 4 months, roughly. It's longer because I actually finished it in July, but I was gone for a portion of the renovation, and the plans were for work to continue with a partner that was going to manage it and keep things rolling. That didn't quite happen. So the actual like work time was closer to 4 months.
Okay, so it took about 4 months, but I guess you're on vacation, or not vacation, but you're out of country for a portion of that time.
Yes. Yep.
Okay. How did it turn out in terms of like renovation budget? Like how much did you end up putting into it?
So originally I guesstimated that I was going to use about 42,000, and it came out to right around 60. So it was much, much higher. When I originally did my estimate, I walked through with the uncle contractor, and I think he was just a little bit more. He's like, oh, we can, you can do that for that much and that for that much. And I wrote it all down, but I think it wasn't as accurate as it could have been.
Gotcha. I think you guys were writing down the numbers. Like if you were to do the work yourself versus hiring it out, is that the case?
So the majority of it was going to be hired out, and then I was going to do a lot of the finished work myself. Okay. So the more expensive, like cabinets, I don't know if you consider that finished work, but cabinets and trim work, electrical fixtures, plumbing, stuff like that.
You're going to do that. I gotcha. Okay. So a little bit over budget, and then so you got the work done. How did it go? Like once you listed it, how did that entire process go? Like the listing and selling, all of that.
So the listing was very smooth. Since the completion date was a moving target due to like all the factors that came up, I didn't stage it, but my agent went with the virtual staging. And we decided that if it didn't move if there was no interest after like a week or so, that we would get, professional staging done and go with that. But luckily, as soon as it was listed on the MLS, they booked, I think, 4 or 5 open or tours in the first Saturday.
Yeah.
So that's almost awesome. Immediately.
So you got it done. Then so someone, I guess, submitted an offer based on that.
Yes.
Okay.
I got 2 offers from the first day.
Awesome. Well, that's crazy. Okay. So you got under contract, you closed it. How was the closing process? Is that pretty smooth too?
Yes. Yep. It went pretty quickly. It closed when it was supposed to from the beginning. I feel like we probably could have done it faster, but the buyer wasn't in a hurry, and I was just crossing my fingers.
Gotcha. Okay, so you got it done. That's exciting. So you got the flip done, and then so what was the number like you ended up selling it for, and then based on that, like what was the final like profit?
So it sold for 159 exactly, which was what we listed at asking. I went with the stronger offer of the 2, and the final profit was like 21,800, so roughly $22,000. And that was a little bit lower. I used hard money. That was the financing that I used. I used a local guy that was able to come out and see it since it was my first solo flip. The points were a little lower up front, but the interest rate was 15%, which is higher than most. Originally, my timeline would have got me a little bit more profit, but since it took longer, the 15% kind of bit me a little bit. So adding up all the interest from that, the closing costs, the fees to sell, I had a little bit of work to do after they did the inspection. Just some gutters needed straightened and a couple minor things. It ended up being about 22,000.
That's really good, especially for a first flip. You made a profit. I know it took a little longer than you wanted, but Definitely like a good experience, and I mean, making money, you can't get mad at that. So what are some of the things like you learned throughout the process?
First and foremost is the rehab estimate. I think I mentioned it partially through the flip, but I used your spreadsheet, like your rehab estimate, and it came off almost on the dot. So if I would have had that, because I started the flip and we closed on it at the end of January, and I didn't start working with you until I think March.
I think that's about right. Yeah.
So going into it, if I would have known a little bit better what I was going to spend, then I could have gotten it for a little less, which would have helped me in the long run.
Yeah.
That was the biggest thing. And second is just getting more, since I didn't have a working relationship with anybody except for the family construction business. I didn't have anybody as a backup. So I think going forward, if I'm working in a new area, to hire different contractors for smaller pieces and see how they do before giving them such a large piece, especially whenever I'm halfway around the world. So when things go wrong, it's a little bit harder to test people out, you know.
I like just like you mentioned, I like the stepwise to try a contractor out. Like, you don't want to say like, oh, here's 5 houses, go at it and let me know, let's talk in 6 months when you're done. It's like, here's this little section of this little part of the house, take care of that, and if you do a good job, then I'll give you the next one. You can increase the project scope each time. So I think that's a really good lesson, and I'm glad you're learning it early versus doing 5 deals at a time. You're like, oh, my only contractor fell out.
Right. Yeah, a little bit too much responsibility and too much of a bottleneck.
Yeah.
Things
Well,
don't go
how
as
do you
planned.
feel, because you've done your first flip now, like how do you feel about the entire process? Like, did this deal like kill your motivation? Like, hey, I never want to do real estate again, never want to flip again? Or are you like empowered, like, hey, I want to go do more deals, I want to make this happen? Like, how do you feel about doing more deals?
I'm anxious to get started
Okay.
on the next one, and the reason for that is because of all the stress and frustration and mistakes that I made throughout this process. If I don't learn from them and get better, then it's all basically for nothing. So,
Right.
which I'm not, I wouldn't be happy about that at all.
That's fair. Yeah. Yeah, especially you'll find like, so the first one's the hardest. The more you do, the easier it's going to get. And all these lessons like compound, it just gets easier and easier. You'll find that out as you do more of these. So excited for you on number 2 here. I mean, with that in mind, like, would you recommend others work with me as well?
Definitely. Like I said, I mean, the mistakes I made, I got lucky because the market continued to appreciate, but had it not, I could have easily lost the same as I got in profit, just because my budget wasn't lined up and the timeline was busted. So between those two things, it could have been a lot worse. I got very, very lucky. But if I would have been working with you in January rather than March, or December rather than March, then my budgets would have been better, and the lessons that I learned, you probably would have advised upon sooner. So.
Right. Well, how do you also feel about like the accessibility and that sort of thing when it came to me? Like, you would hit me up with a question, and how did you feel like my response time and like response rate and like the answers, were they helpful? Would just like to hear about that if you're comfortable sharing.
Yes, definitely. Anytime I had an issue or a major problem, I just reach out on Voxer, and I mean, you would get back to me that day at some point. So I'm sure if I would have called, if I had like the place was on fire and I needed you, but luckily I wasn't in any situation like that. But having you to reach out to when I was unsure of things, was just having that ability, just like kind of in the background, made me feel a lot more comfortable, especially whenever it got rough.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it helps just to have someone like as a second set of eyes, or just someone to bounce things off of. Like, especially if things get rocky, just like you said, like, okay, cool. Hey, am I doing the right thing? Am I not doing the right thing? For sure. So like, why should someone like listening take action now?
Well, if I would have done this, 10 years ago, then I can only imagine where I would be. I finally did it, and I'm anxious to do the next one. So you can only go forward in time, not backwards.
Mhm.
So today I feel like is the best time to, get your feet wet, make the mistakes, so that the sooner you make the mistakes, the sooner you can learn from them.
Mhm.
I'm sure you still make mistakes even after this many flips. So the waiting for perfection, I don't think is ever going to happen for myself, for you, or anybody else. So
Unfortunately, no, that's the always thing. It's like, yeah, there's two rules in real estate. It always takes longer than you want. It always costs more than you want. It's, so even, even me today, I wish I could say like it's perfect and like every deal like ends on schedule, ends on budget, and that's typically not the case. And just as you saw, like having like a good margin of error, because if you make mistakes or if you miss something, like that's going to chip away that margin of error.
mhm.
And if you do enough good job and have enough margin, you'll still make a profit just like you did. And 22K, that's a good amount of money. That's a big hefty check.
Mhm.
So glad you went through that process. So awesome. But I really appreciate you hopping on here, like sharing your story, sharing like this first milestone in your journey. Like the first deal is the toughest, and just really cool to see that progress and see you progress as a flipper and as a person. So that's been really cool to see and watch. Um, anything else like you wanted to share? Anything else on your mind, like as we wrap up?
Just to go along with what you just asked me, I forgot to mention earlier, I did work as a commercial assistant project manager
Mhm.
for construction projects. My degree is in civil engineering
Mhm.
with construction management, and I think something that pushed me, because I did a rental prior to the flip last year,
Mhm.
and part of the reason I did that was because I was working on projects that were worth $1 million, 2.5, $3 million, and they were over budget. The schedules were always messed up. Like, I don't think it matters. This was for a company. The guy's been doing it for 25 years.
Yeah.
They still mess up. So I just figured, these guys are doing this for a living for very specific styles of projects. It's like higher education,
Uh-huh.
and they're not perfect. So that's why
Yeah.
it's like, well, they're still making mistakes on these ones and they're doing just fine. So
Mhm.
the sooner I start, then the sooner I'll be where they are, or, with larger projects and,
Mhm. I think it's a
bigger.
good lesson, just like you mentioned, like your family was doing it, and then you realize, like, hey, why not me? And it's the same thing with like the commercial projects. It's like, they're doing it, making mistakes. Like, so like, why not me? Like, why not like make mistakes? Like, why actually not do it for yourself, so to speak? So I think that's the biggest thing. And you did it for yourself, and here we go. And
Mhm.
that's the biggest thing. Instead of trying to build something for someone else, try to build it for yourself and
Right.
actually, actually do it. So I think that's a good takeaway.
Yep.
Cool. Cool. Well, yeah, again, appreciate you hopping on, sharing your story here. Yeah, I appreciate it. Till next time.
All right. Thank you.